The Minnesota Vikings are now linked to the top offensive guard in this year's NFL draft. We're going to be talking about who this is and what implications this will have with many other teams looking at this guy. We're going to be talking about all that here in this video. Before we get into it, though, Griffen, we noticed that 91% of you guys watching right now are not subscribed to the channel. If you're looking for a spot for all of your Minnesota Vikings news, you're in the right spot. Hit the sub button. Join us here on the channel. We're covering everything Minnesota Vikings with so much news that is bound to happen now with the Super Bowl done. We have to get into this because we're going to be getting a lot more news. Let's get straight into who this is because we know the Vikings need an offensive guard. That is not even a shadow of a doubt. We need that to be our main priority heading into this offseason. And when we're looking at it, as is tradition around these parts, the Vikings enter the offseason in need of some upgrades on their interior offensive line. Armed with plenty of cap space, that figures one of their top priorities in free agency. But even if they sign two starting guards, it's still an area they could address early in April's draft, which is all about taking the best players available. And if they only sign one guard to a big contract, this is very much in play at 24 or trading down, which I kind of expect Kwesi and Adofo-Mensah to do from this article. Not me personally, but let's go over the five interior offensive line names to keep in mind. Now, we're not going over the five. We're going over the number one here because realistically, number one is the one that the Vikings are going to not want, but need to get to find the success that this team plans to have. We know that J.J. McCarthy is on track, still not guaranteed yet, but on track to be the starting quarterback, and we know he's going to need some help from the offensive line, from a running back, and we already have the wide receiver and tight ends locked down. Those guys are here to help him, but with J.J. McCarthy, we know that there are going to be a few different situations here where he needs help. And number one, Tyler Booker, the beast of a guard who would be a very tempting option at number 24 if he makes it that far. Listed at 6'5", 325 pounds. He started at left guard for Alabama and was an All-American last season. Booker is a powerful player who can anchor pass protection and dislodge bodies in the run game. He is a consistent producer who will bring high floor and ceiling to whichever team drafts him. Booker has also been praised for his leadership qualities with high school teammates with J.J. McCarthy at IMG Academy in 2020. He hasn't even turned 21 yet. J.J. McCarthy, Tyler Booker, reuniting these two in purple and gold is exactly what the Vikings need to do. So, Griffen, when we're looking at this, of course, we know there's many offensive guards, but how important is it to really narrow down into one that you know will be the one that the Vikings need?
Yeah, it's everything for this team because you have a quarterback who, as much as people don't want to say that he's a rookie anymore because he did sit out for the whole year, he's still a rookie. He hasn't played a regular season game. He hasn't gotten any crunch time experience like we've talked about before, where he's still going to be fresh and heading into this season. So making sure that he is protected is a major thing. We've talked about the Trey Smith stuff before, but if you can't go and get him and you have to take a chance on a younger guy, make sure it's somebody that he can trust. And with this particular example with Hooker, you have that where you have the guy that he's played with before in high school. He knows what he's like. Yes, they didn't play together in college, but they still will have that connection. We've seen that translate to the NFL very well, particularly with Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. Those guys have been fantastic, and look at what they've been able to accomplish.
Yeah, the trust is a big thing, like you said. Being able to know that you have confidence in the guy that you've played with before, someone that you know can either help in the run game, help in the pass game, or even better than that, both, is very important to a quarterback. And they're kind of, just mental state coming into a game and preparedness for what they can face in a game. But I want to pull up his NFL draft profile, because when we're looking at this guy from Alabama, you know that Bama produced some incredible players. And when you put him at guard, being able to play both sides is important. Although majority of those snaps are at left guard, and almost more than majority, almost all of them. But a guard, 6'5", 325, one of those old school sized guards, someone who can really, be important in every aspect of the offensive line is something that the Vikings were going to need. I don't want the Vikings to focus on just one, whether it be the run, whether it be passing game. I want them to see someone who they trust in both. Someone who is really being able to have that ability. And like you said, Trey Smith is a guy like that, and it all depends on what will happen, whether they go out and sign him, whether they also draft Tyler Booker in that case, something that, along the lines of that, really seems good to me. But when you go and look at his draft projection, first round, and then this is not me. Once again, this is not my graphic. This is from, I believe, Bleacher Report. So where they said they would take him is in the top 20. And ESPN's mock draft has him going at 13 to the Miami Dolphins. So this is a very interesting kind of outlook on where we're going to see him here. Because, of course, the Vikings have the 24th overall pick. If he were to drop down that far, you almost have to take him. That's too good of an opportunity. We know that that first round pick is not going to a tight end. It's not going to a wide receiver. It's not going to a quarterback. It's not going to many defensive positions. Of course, if you can get any specific secondary player you like, of course, that's a great option too. But offensive line has been, the highlight since the Vikings lost that wild card game that needs to be addressed and needs to be fixed. And Tyler Booker, I think, brings every aspect of that the Vikings are looking for to this game. So when we're looking at this, of course, I think it is something that very much needs to be considered, especially if he does drop down to 24 at any point in this draft. But when we're looking at him as well, we have to look who he's been with before. Coaches, players. Nick Saban, of course, here as well, known longtime legendary head coach for Alabama, has come out and spoken out about him. Says he became a full-time starter as a sophomore and took on a more prominent leadership role for the Crimson Tide. He's a leader of the group. He can help those around him perform better because he's a great communicator. And having Nick Saban come out about this, about not just any player, but especially an offensive guard who's really shown some struggles in his career, but nothing anything major, nothing that Nick Saban saw concern in. But saying this, a great communicator, and really coming out specifically about Booker is something that I think is a very important and very underrated aspect of his game, communication and whatnot. And once again, that also comes in side to side with J.J. McCarthy. But they also have a list here, Bleacher Report does, of his strengths and weaknesses. And I think, Griffen, this is something that we need to take a very, very close look at, because when we head into his strengths, a lot. That's a very, very good sign no matter what you see. If you see a lot of strength, that's automatically a good sign. But as you break down some of these, it really goes to show that he is, in every aspect of his game, elite. And it just goes to show, from his build, going from, how good he can run on the run, block on the run, block on the pass, whatever it may be. He is elite at it, and he's very, very quick from what we're seeing here as well. But when you go into the weakness as well, it says he's a bit slow on his feet, quick with his hands. Obviously, that's something that is not horrible for an offensive lineman, but the strengths play a serious, serious thing here. But when you head to the weaknesses, one thing of concern that we were talking about just before this video, Griffen, was the aggressiveness. And of course, the aggressiveness is something that you would love to have. You want to have the aggressiveness, especially on an offensive lineman who is running on both ends of the spectrum, going from the pass, the run, everything. You want to see him quick. You want to see him aggressive. But too aggressive can cause a few problems. And we've seen that in the Vikings past. We've seen that in many, many issues that can be caused by that. So when we're looking at his weaknesses, I think that there's one there certainly very concerning, but overall, a lot of good strengths for him.
Overall, when you look at his strengths, if anyone was looking at the strengths of that and looking at an offensive lineman, they would think that is just the blueprint of what you want in an offensive lineman, and specifically a guard, and especially as a rookie. He's a young guy, and he is a big boy. He has got a lot going for him, a lot of upside, a lot of potential. But that aggressiveness is also something where we talked about it before, like you said, where if that's going to cost us penalties, we don't want a repeat of Phil Loadholt, where, yeah, Phil Loadholt, he was fantastic. Same with, on the defensive side, Xavier Rhodes. Those guys were fantastic, aggressive, shut down players at their position. But what's the main risk that you pose of being one of those shut down players? You're going to take a lot of penalties. So when you're going to shut down these guys, you're going to take a lot of holding calls. You're going to take hands to the face. You're going to take some of these calls that most guys probably wouldn't get because they're not as aggressive. But part of the aggressiveness is why you want him there, where he can bury a guy, hopefully not giving up a blitzer in the process or another rusher. But if he can bury a guy, move on to the next block and not take a penalty, you'd want that perfectly, because like we've said before, this is a Minnesota team, and an offensive line specifically. Teams do not fear. We want to be a fearful team, or a fearsome team, heading into next season. We want teams to respect us. We don't want teams to just count us out, treat us like the little brother of the NFC, or let alone the NFC North in that respect. So we want to get our respect that we feel like we've earned and have deserved. We are one of these teams that is long overdue for a championship. And one of the things towards getting that is, like it said in the very first graphic we pulled up, what's very common around these parts is the offensive line. How do we fix that? Let's not make that a common reoccurrence every single offseason or every single season where, yeah, we have all the offensive talent in the world. We have all the skill positions that we need. We have all the depth that we need. But when it comes down to the offensive line and protecting our quarterback, making sure we don't get exposed and getting him time, that is where we fall short almost every single year, at least for the past 10 years. So if Minnesota fans are used to this being a topic of discussion, how about we change that narrative and let's go out and get a guy so that this doesn't have to be a topic every single offseason?
Yeah, and we've been speaking about offensive line a lot since the season has, really ended for the Minnesota Vikings, but it just goes to show how important it is, and the way that all these articles are really making things out to be is that the Vikings are putting everything on the table to go out and get the offensive line, the guards in specific, that they need. So, of course, we've been looking at Trey Smith in the past, but we're gonna have a lot more regarding the draft as the weeks go on. So, if you want to hit the sub button, get all your news for the Vikings, be sure to do so. We're going to be talking about a lot more players here, especially when it comes down to the draft here in on this channel. So be sure to hit the sub button. That's all we got in this video. If you did enjoy, give it a like, hit the sub button as well. But we're signing out. Thank you for watching. Hope you have a great day. See you later.